Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's panel discussion, Harnessing Data and Artificial Intelligence to Build Growth and Resilience. Tonight's EU Insights reflect on data and AI as the core of corporate strategic goals. But before we start, we would like you to consider becoming a member at United Europe and support us in finding answers and solutions to the most pressing questions in Europe. For example, what are the possibilities of new data-enabled business models? I'm now delighted to hand proceedings over to our young professional advisor and moderator, Anna Chashchyna.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here today moderating the event with our guest speaker, Mika Ruokonen. As you know, since you have registered for this virtual event, online event, you know that we will be discussing today the vast opportunities and possibilities that data and AI gives businesses to boost their growth and reinvent the way we are doing business today. Our guest, Mika Ruokonen from Finland, he has been in software and digital business for more than 15 years now. He's the author of the book, Growth Reinvented, Turn Your Data into Money, that has been issued in November 2020. And today I want to ask Mika all the questions I have after reading his book, and hopefully also give you the opportunity, the audience, the opportunity to ask your questions. So quick technical notice, if you have any questions, here in the bottom panel, you have Q&A, you can shoot your message there. And I will make sure to address it to Mika. So let's get it started. Mika, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background. Welcome.
All right, thank you. My name is Mika Ruokonen. Greetings from Helsinki, Finland. I live here in Helsinki, and my background is, as you mentioned, more or less like 15 years in. It used to be called software business, but nowadays digital business, I guess. So in various roles, I've been leading digital businesses. I've been doing sales and marketing and strategy work and business development and these kind of things in several kinds of roles. Always still from the business perspective. So I don't do any software development, or I'm not a designer or anything, but I'm more kind of a business guy who is interested in technology. And the last 4 years I've been working at Futurist, which is a digital innovation and engineering consultancy based here in Helsinki, but we also have offices in Sweden and in Germany and in the UK. And as one of the facts, I've been involved in this United Europe earlier. Some years back, there were a couple of events in Helsinki. So I was speaking once, and then one of the events was organized at Futurist office. So that's a little bit my background and why I'm here. And yes, I've been writing a book, and let's talk about that.
Awesome. You mentioned you're not a software person yet. I noticed in the book you say we will be treating data and AI as a software. Let's start a little bit with the terminology. Let's get it straight. What is data and what is AI, and what kind of an expectation the book sets about these two terms?
Yeah, okay. Well, starting from data. So basically, how I'm kind of describing it and defining it, it's kind of digital footprints, of course, of people, of machines. Sometimes, people are using online tools or walking on the street and using Google Maps or whatever. There are these digital footprints of people. And at the same time, we have machines, we have engines or cars, or sometimes moving thanks to a human, sometimes autonomously. So there are various points of human activity, or even weather, how things are happening in the environment. So there are many data points. Then on the other hand, AI is a kind of a umbrella term for many technologies, and some of these are like face recognition or voice recognition, or computers learning from data input, which is then more kind of the machine learning field, and these kind of things. And so it's kind of a and one could say that you have a continuum where you have like a raw data is the kind of the simplest form, and then you have analytics or even more advanced analytics and machine learning, and maybe the kind of the most advanced stage is then this true AI, if you can call something such. But it's more kind of this kind of increasing maturity and increasing sophistication, and many steps in between.
Right. Well, you have a lot of years of experience in digital and software kind of world. What drove you to write the book? What was your motivation to deliver the book to the world? What kind of gaps and blank spots you saw in the industry that you wanted to address, that you sat down and said, I'm going to write this book?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, I'm kind of sensing that, as I said earlier, that it used to be software business and then it became digital business. And I'm feeling that this kind of data and AI is the kind of the next wave of digital technology. So it's kind of emerging. More and more you hear companies talk about AI, and maybe, let's say 2 years ago, many managers were kind of asking the question that what is AI? I don't understand it, so please explain me what is AI. Whereas nowadays what I hear in the market and the customer speaking is that how can I use AI for my business purposes? So the kind of the sentiment has changed, that it's not anymore, let's say, a mystery, but it's more kind of how can I use it in business. And as I said, I'm a business guy. So I know the business perspective, and then I understand the technology side at least a little bit, so I can understand it properly. And I think then there were these kind of reasons from the, let's say, witnessing what is happening in the world. So I think if one starts to read books about AI and data, there's this kind of theoretical promise that data and AI will enable completely new business models. And if you ask then the kind of the nasty question, what exactly are those business models, then you don't find that many answers. And that was kind of that, okay, yes, there's a big promise, yet nobody has truly made the effort to describe what that really is. And then at the same time, companies are collecting data, like a massive amount of data, and yet they are telling me that, hey, we don't yet get enough value out of our data assets. So how can we turn data into value? That's a very practical side of things again. And these are the things that I kind of found this kind of an empty spot, an opportunity, and I felt that nobody has done it. Then I felt that I want to learn. I want to have this kind of continuous learning, and also some curiosity that I wanted to find out. So it's kind of market needs, but also personal motivation and curiosity. And I like to write, so that of course
that so much reminds me of my own podcast. First you do it for yourself because you identify your own blank spots, and then you're like, okay, I'm ready to give it to the world, let everyone benefit from it. Business models is something that I very much appreciated in your book. I liked how you immediately set the boundaries of this book is about this and that. And if you're looking for something else, go search for for this different kind of information somewhere else. I like how you dive deep into the business models that AI and data enables businesses to have. And I think it's very important because you touched on something very, painful point of many businesses. I have some data, I have all my funnels and data collecting spots, but I have zero idea how to monetize on it. What is even legal to do with this data? What is ethical? And in general, like, okay, I have data, so what's next? What do I do with it then? How do I analyze it and how do I make use of it? Can you now take a dive into business models? How many of those have you identified, and what are the particularities of each one?
Okay, maybe to start from the bigger picture. So as part of the book writing process, I studied in total roughly 50 companies. With 20 companies, I had these co-creation sessions. So we spent time together and we worked on their kind of company-specific issues related to data, related to business models. And then there were roughly 30 companies that I studied through online information sources. So wasn't able to work with them. But the kind of the outcome then is this kind of business model playbook, which is kind of the let's say the universe of options. And I often talk about these, let's say, products/services, so the offering side of things, and then I talk about revenue models, which is the other dimension, so to speak. How do you? So first you have to decide that what do you want to sell, and the other one is that how do you make money? But how do you attach a revenue model to that? But if I give a couple of examples. So obviously the longer story is in the book, so they are all these business model options described. But maybe to divide those in two. So there's one side that is kind of product oriented. So companies are selling raw data or reports, or they are building dashboards to their clients where clients can see data or study data. Or then these platform business models. So you have many companies who are building data platforms, and some companies are even selling their algorithms. So if they realize that they have this super nice algorithm that is kind of reusable in that sense, that is not particularly for their own company, then they can even license that to some other companies who might benefit from that as well. And then there's the other side. The other side is more kind of service oriented business models. So that is more kind of, let's say, consulting, first of all, using data to build consulting services. So the better you understand your customers through data, the better consulting services you can build. Or this kind of improvement of customers' life or daily operations or business. And then some of these more radical ones are selling of outcomes. You tie your invoicing to the benefit of the customer, and then you get paid by how much benefits you deliver. Or then these capacity models, you're replacing ownership with access. So some companies are saying, well, you don't have to own a car or truck or an engine anymore, so you can use it as a service. And always there is this data element strongly present. The better data, the more data you have, the better insights, then the more opportunities you have for business model renewal.
Right. Can you give us a more kind of concrete example of a product-oriented company that uses AI successfully today, and then on the other hand, service-oriented companies, so we kind of wrap our heads around this imagination of the topic?
Yeah, all right. So from the product point of view, Facebook might be a very well-known, it's a platform that harnesses data and algorithms to optimize advertising, for example, like a very well-known example. If you want the European example that is slightly less known, I would look after Eagle Alpha, which is an Irish company that has a platform where data providers and companies who need data, it's kind of a meeting place for data providers. It's like a data brokerage company that is kind of a middleman helping buyers and sellers find each other. So that's kind of the product side, rather standardized platforms, rather standardized products for all the clients in an equal way. Then the services side are, well, let's take an example of, for example, MAN Trucks and Bus, like a big corporation who is selling trucks and now moving these kind of trucks as a service. So you don't have to own a truck anymore, but you can license and use it. Or then you might say that IBM, for example, the big ICT company, has Watson algorithms, and they are doing successful consulting business. Their clients are sending them data, and they are doing a consulting project and delivering an analysis of the data. So these kind of examples, at least.
Right. I have a question. Since I started reading the book and until now, I still have this brewing in me. From a legal perspective, is there anyone regulating in the world, or let's say in the European, from the European standpoint, is there any body, any governmental authority regulating the transparency of this data or data protection? Because when you said product-oriented companies can sell their data, how covered this data is? Because I imagine I have a mobile operator and someone will want to know, for example, how many people live in this location. How protected my personal data is in this case? Will they take just the phone number, zero attachment to personal data like, I don't know, gender, age, etc.? Who covers that, or who deals with that, if you can?
Okay, so that obviously is a concern, and when I'm talking about these data and AI-enabled business models, then there's different kinds of data. You know, if you have weather data, you know, that's kind of how the nature works. Nobody owns it. You know, it's kind of in that sense like a public domain, and but then your personal data, for example, is your personal data. It's much more sensitive, especially if it's like super sensitive parts, you know, like health information, banking information, these kind of sensitive data sets. And for those, you know, there's much more regulated environment for those. And then obviously in the EU, there's the GDPR, so the regulation set by the European Union, which is really like, at least I consider it strong. So it's kind of giving heavy penalties to companies if they break the regulation. And obviously the European countries with their local legislation, they are following that. But then if you look outside of the Europe, then obviously then in the US, I think they don't have GDPR yet, and let alone China. Then I think China is kind of the, so to speak, wild west of data usage, and I think their let's say culture, their ways of working might be very different from what we have in Europe. But looking at it from the European perspective, I think when I speak with companies about the legal issues or even the ethical issues, sometimes things are not set by the law, but it's more kind of ethical things that do you do it or not? And I think that I'm sensing from the European companies quite a lot of this kind of responsible behavior and protection of the brand, in that sense that they want to be seen as a kind of a credible and trusted party when it comes to data.
Right, that's very good to hear. You called your book Growth Reinvented. Now I have a rather linguistic question. Earlier in our discussion, you said, well, 10 years ago, the companies were saying X, and now they change and now they are saying something else. Reinvented versus evolved, you know, evolution versus complete reinvention. What's behind this choice of a word? Why growth reinvented? Are we talking about complete disruption of you know, of the digital canvas, or are we talking rather about the evolution? What's your take on that?
It's good that you ask, because I think that is one of the main questions even in the book, that, you know, are we truly seeing this kind of a revolution when it comes to businesses? And I personally believe that AI is disruptive technology, so it has like the promise is big, and there are plenty of these opportunities that are described in the book. So there are many examples how companies are harnessing it already. Yet if you look at the hard facts, and if you look like how the GDPs of countries have developed, it's actually, there's evidence that the last 10 years versus the 10 years before, like the last 10 years have been worse than the years back. So, you know, at least you don't yet see this kind of clear evidence in the GDPs of countries that AI would be boosting productivity, for example. And the other one, of course, then that if I speak with companies, many of these business models that companies are building are then after all rather incremental. So they take the existing product and augment it with data, for example, or they build algorithms to the existing business within the existing market and these kind of things. And of course, there are exceptions to this and these kind of breakout scenarios. Some companies have truly like totally new types of businesses as well. But this is really the big question that, on one hand, we have this big promise, and the coming years will show us more. And then on the other hand, we still are kind of struggling to see this kind of very strong evidence that this is now somehow changing the rules of the game.
Right. Who do you think will be the winner, the portrait of the winner of the future? Is the company that does what with the AI?
That's a tough one. I think, I think the winners will be those who start early. So it's maybe it's this kind of misunderstanding. Companies think that, well, now I suddenly start using AI, and then they realize, well, oh no, it takes a lot of time to develop something so sophisticated than that. So obviously, if you want to get results, you have to start early. That's like one of the elements there. Otherwise, winning those who manage to truly reinvent and think from a very creative point of view. So I think some of these low-hanging fruits, every company can take technology and use it for this kind of obvious purposes. But then the question is that, are you more creative than your competitors? So can you find like a brand new way? And of course, then there are many opportunities to develop a technology, but sometimes it doesn't make any sense if your customers don't want it. So it's kind of also this customer orientation. How do you take the customers by the hand and walk with them to the future? At least these kind of perspectives. You can look at it from many perspectives, but at least from these come to my mind now.
I have a weird question. Is there even a space for creativity, or digital and AI kind of area of work is more technical and mathematical and algorithmical, and if this then that? What kind of creativity can be out there coming from a non-technical person?
Yeah, I think there always is, and I think our futurist company is a nice example of that, because we have the kind of, let's say, the deep technology experience, software developers, data scientists, and mathematicians, and this kind of competence. On the other side, we have very creative service designers, or UI designers, these creative people who design user interfaces, so how products look and how they feel, and these kind of things. And it's actually a pretty interesting dialogue between these two, because on one hand you need to have these hard facts and the kind of the software and the code and the infrastructure and data and all sorts of things, and at the same time the one who uses those in a most creative and user-friendly way, that's the creative part. So still you always have to have these both coming together, and it's not always easy, and it takes a little bit of adjustment from both of the sides and experience on working together. But I strongly feel that this creativity always, and innovation is kind of the things that you never can kind of eliminate innovation. You always have to have this kind of a spirit.
And then there is the third party, which is you, a business development person, or
fair enough, yes. Yeah, true.
Your book was released in November 2020, which means that you have been working on it for a large part of 2020, when the COVID-19 hit in an unprecedented scale the world. What have you noticed? How, out of 50 companies you interviewed and used as case studies, what have you noticed they started doing differently, and in which way their innovation got reinvented? Maybe this is the right usage of the word, of the word reinvention in 2020.
Well, first of all, I think this COVID virus has treated companies very differently, as you may have seen. So the travel industry, for example, like a very tough times, a very difficult situation, whereas online grocery stores or some digital businesses, existing digital businesses are booming. It's very kind of difficult to give like a generic answer that this is the impact. But maybe what is common is that many companies have been forced to rethink their business models in one way or another. The kind of the simplest way, maybe for some companies, we switch to online and then we start to use online tools for business purposes. That's maybe the obvious and easiest, or touchless operations, for example. Then they are the hardest ones, some, let's say an airline, 90% drop in revenue. So you have to totally reinvent, seek for financing, find innovative ways of operate your business under very difficult conditions. So big changes there. And one of the key terms that I'm using in the book is resilience. So I don't think that this will be the last shock. I think this was now a big change in the circumstances, but I bet there will be more of these in the future. So now the question is that, okay, first of all, how do you survive under these conditions? But at the same time, how can you use data and AI to build resilience so that if the next one comes, then you are way better prepared. But these are the themes, that companies are now discussing. That okay, now we have it. We've been learning to deal with it, but we are ready to challenge our business because of this. One might say that 2-3 years ago there was not a burning platform in that sense. It was just okay to continue with the existing business, but now it's more kind of truly thinking that these things that we are doing now, are this really making any sense, or should we reinvent this whole thing? So and then using data and AI as part of the renewal. So.
Right, but out of your kind of sample size for the book, out of those 50 companies, have you can you recall maybe, or can you share some interesting and curious examples of how a company completely changed the way they were doing business before 2020?
Yeah, I think, well, maybe not from those companies so much, but if I look at then these kind of tendencies, what companies do, I think one of the big changes is that you move from a product business to a service business thanks to data and AI. And these are one of the big changes. Some of these product companies are thinking that, can we reinvent how we do service business? And now that, if you cannot send a technician to the field, can I use data and algorithms to do the same service business there, without the human contact? So this could be an example of renewing the business, or vice versa. There could be a service business that is thinking that, well, actually, should we productize some of these services and sell them as a product, and again use data and AI as part of that. Or then there are these expansions in the value chain. You have this certain position in your value chain, but then you look around. I've had these kind of sessions with some of our clients that, hey, what can we do in a different way? Should we work more closely with our suppliers, or should we work more closely with our customers and expand the scope of our business? So that is one of the versions of resilience, in that sense that you find a new business area and you build a new business on top of your data and your algorithms.
What can we do is, I think, is the most exciting question of all times. Okay, we're here. What do we do from now? And speaking of that, I noticed in the book, you give kind of a diagram of 6 steps of how to. So for anyone who is listening to us today or will listen to this recording later, say someone has a business and is ready to make use of big data and AI. Can you walk us through your 6 steps of how to?
All right, let's do so. And the point why I chose to describe these steps was to give something tangible to people. it's not enough if you describe what these business models are, but it's much more valuable if you define, how to go towards them. But let's go through the steps. So the first step is working from the customer perspective, and always the first step is to look at your marketplace and your customers and your competition, and studying the customers. Are there any problems worth solving, or are there any jobs to be done, or is there any willingness to pay? So always start from the demand side of things. The next one is more kind of the supply side of things, maturity. What do we have? Probably we have some data. Could we collect some more data? Do we have algorithms? Do we have a vision within the company what to do with our data? Do we have a strong organization and capabilities and competencies for that? So if the first one is the customer, the second one is more kind of the internal point of view and maturity. How ready are we? The third one is more kind of setting an ambition. So companies need to make like a clear decision whether they are being proactive, proactively driving for new business, or reactively following their competitors or the market or their customers. And then obviously this kind of ambition is also a question of commitment, that you get your key people to agree on a common goal and then working towards that. The fourth one is basically business calculation, so making a business case. As I said earlier, there are many opportunities to develop technologies, but some of them are definitely not worth doing. So do our numbers support this? As discussed, it takes a lot of time to develop AI. So is it worth it? Is there really, can we get money out of that? What is the size of the investment versus then how much money can be received? And then the fifth one is then these projects. So there's more kind of execution. Of course, you have a roadmap. Then you have development teams, and you make things happen. And then the last one is more about taking it from the culture and management point of view. That is there a change in how we manage our company? So should we take data and AI also as part of our management practices? And that maybe is the last one. But yeah, these are the 6 steps. And but if you want to hear like one thing that is the most important, start from the customer. That is the kind of the key thing. Start from the customer. The rest will follow. Right. So the common mistake is that I start from my data. But first, start from the customer and only then go to your kind of internal.
Meaning, kind of understand what the customer wants and what kind of value you're willing to give to the customer. Is it what you mean?
Yes. And often, as we discussed these kind of product-oriented and service-oriented models, then you can do so many things with data and AI. And there are many opportunities to do different kinds of things. But first you have to understand what the customer really wants, because that is kind of the clearest sign that you are doing something valuable.
Right. But this comes into play when we start talking about AI. Before that, there is a big step of collect your data, right?
That is true. Yeah. And actually, well, it's kind of this rule of thumb that 80% of the time of development is basically actually putting your data together. So it's really a big effort, and companies often underestimate the amount of work that is needed to move from collecting data towards kind of having well-structured data that is usable, and only the last 20% is more kind of this sexy algorithms and AI, but it's kind of the 80% is this hard work of building this infrastructure and the readiness. Right. And only after those you can then move towards the kind of the coolest parts.
As someone who is working in the field of environment and sustainability, I wanted to address this question to you. I see a lot of buzz in the media. Everyone is measuring or about to measure ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And one of the last steps that you mentioned is management of this data and management of the AI. I know that in the book you don't go too broad into sustainability topic. What is interesting, you end on the note like just start early enough and you'll be good to go. But still, is there a way to quickly collect environmental, social, and governance data within the company? And this is, this is why I asked you in the previous question, like first you have to collect it, correct? So is there a way to kind of collect, because speaking from the experience, I see companies don't even know how much water they are consuming as a company, as a building, how much waste and what exactly the waste they are generating, what's going on afterwards. Is there a way to collect this data fast and get on track with the management of the data, let alone AI?
I have to admit that I'm probably not the best expert of sustainability, I have to say, and I'm learning. I'm curious to learn more. But my understanding is that what I've heard, what I've understood is that this kind of sustainability and data. In a way, those people who are working on sustainability don't get too well together with data. It's oftentimes it's more kind of that we are writing a report or we are describing it verbally what we are doing, but then this kind of data side seems to be a challenge for many of the ESG officers or sustainability experts. Yet at the same time, there are many types of data that actually tell about your environmental impact, such as activities, or you might have sensors in the field, or energy consumption you can read from the meters and these kind of things. And the good thing of course is that many business benefits are actually sustainability benefits as well. So if you are saving costs or optimizing operations or eliminating waste or reducing energy consumption, so not only you get business benefits, but you also get the sustainability impact at the same time. So, and even in some of these business models, if you look at some of these business models, even some of them, as I talked about this outcome, for example, that you are guaranteeing outcomes to your clients, it basically means that your own incentives are very well geared towards efficiency and optimization and elimination of unnecessary work and these kind of things. So again, a business model can also contribute to sustainability. But more than that, I think it's a tough question. I'm not sure whether I'm best positioned to answer, but I feel that there are plenty of opportunities in that field.
This is, an invitation to write volume 2 of Growth Reinvented.
Good.
Consider it an invitation. We have 20 minutes left to our session. I will ask you my last question, and I will remind our audience that in order to ask a question, please use Q&A kind of icon, button in the bottom panel of your screen of Zoom. So my last questions to you, Mika, would be, what are the challenges that you see ahead, and how these challenges turn into opportunities?
Two questions in one sentence. I'm trying to answer both, but maybe I think one of these important things is that people need to move from speak to action. So there has been quite a lot of speech and discussion and dialogue on AI. Yet I think most important step always is to get things done. So when you are speaking, nothing really moves ahead. But when you are doing something, that's like a big change that companies need to start, and they need to start early. Then I think one of the kind of the challenges and opportunity, as we discussed earlier, is the creativity. So how can you really think big, like see the big opportunities, and there are many, and I've described those in the book, but also start small. So how do you actually, instead of having these 5-year plans or these gigantic projects, how do you take this kind of baby steps, so go forward step by step, and it's always possible, so you have to you take like a proper size project that you actually get something done. And then I think one of the things that is a challenge, but also an opportunity, that companies need to kind of systematize this capability of innovating new business. You know, it should be like a core capability to every now and then challenge your business models and think and ideate and validate with customers and pilot new business models and test and learn and continuously evaluate your business models. And it's not easy. The bigger the company, often the more difficult it is to kind of see outside of the box. But that is kind of the business model innovation capability that needs to be fostered. And yeah, I think, and as I said earlier, then it's kind of this gradual shift and gradual transformation. One might call it an AI transformation, that you take steps and bit by bit and step after step you go towards a kind of a higher sophistication. But let's say it's a long journey. It means a lot of work, and sometimes people don't even understand the amount of work. Yet, even with smaller steps, you can get things started and move ahead.
One really last question.
Okay.
I love this phrase, start where you are. Imagine you have a company, they started with the customer, they know they have some value to offer, but they cannot do it by themselves. Like, I'm an environmentalist and I have a company, but I don't know how to deal with it. What's my step number one? Shall I look for a consultant? Shall I go for a company, employ someone, or how to deal with it?
Call me. That's the easiest. Buy a book.
Buy a book and then call you.
Yeah, maybe. But obviously then I don't pretend to have all the answers, first of all. And I'm a business guy, so I don't pretend to solve technical problems. And that is the kind of the strength of the teams. So which kind of teams do you have? Do you have like and often it makes sense to have these diverse competencies coming together. As I described, we have some of our people are like really deep technology experts and then designers and business people. So you're never alone. I mean, and the point is to build a successful team around you. So you have to find these people who can complement your knowledge and your understanding. And even it has been the same with this digital business earlier, that the best teams win. But now even more than before, it's such a kind of a big and ambitious topic that you cannot master it alone. So you always need to have like colleagues or vendors or partners, and you can call me.
Excellent. We have questions from the audience. The first one is coming from Rolf Pfeiffer. To you, Mika, what's your biggest fear around the future use of AI? And what's your biggest hope? Your biggest fear, your biggest hope?
Let me start from the positive side, because of course I'd like to look at the opportunity, and I feel that the kind of the opportunity is really in kind of, especially for the European companies, to make sure that we are not lagging behind. So obviously the US companies and the Asian companies are working on it extensively already. So I think the opportunity is there for the European companies to step up their game and really start learning. And this is a learning opportunity. I like to learn. I think many people like to learn and contribute. And there's plenty of space for people to get interested and take action. So that's the opportunity. The fear then, or the problem, I'm not a big believer of robots invading the world or any of these kind of horror stories or this kind of what you hear that, okay, we are all doomed and machines will take over. And I don't feel like that. It's so far in the future if anything like that would happen. If nothing happens overnight, I think the fears are kind of overemphasized, at least to me. But what we discussed earlier is this ethical side of things and the legal side of things, and that is something to be kept in mind, and there are even these kind of cases where the data has leaked, for example. So even cybersecurity, these kind of things, protection of data, these are the kind of I'm not saying that the fears, but these are the risks that companies need to be kind of trustworthy in what they do. And it might be even a European advantage if you compare us against the Chinese or the US companies, that we could be the trusted party.
Mm-hmm. All right. Second question is from Wolfgang Wilcom. Thank you both for the interesting aspects. Could you name a few more possibilities for resilience, except finding a new business area for a decline in company success?
Resilience. Well, there are many. Of course, that is a big word, first of all. So companies have many ways of building resilience, and many of those ways have nothing to do with data and AI. So I think for many I heard that Tesla was forced to stop their car manufacturing because they ran out of chips. So these small parts, so one of these resilience factors is to look at supply chain. Do we have enough vendors in our supply chain, and that might have something to do with data, or it might not. So there are many other ways to do that. Then financing is one of these areas. Does you like the airlines? I think many airlines had to renegotiate their financing completely now during the COVID times, because that is one of your resilience. That are you running out of money? So then the financial side is one of them as well. So there are many ways of building resilience, and many of them have nothing to do with data and AI, but it's more kind of this 360 to your company, like having all perspectives, even your internal, your capabilities, so that you have the competence in place that you are.
Right. So it's not necessarily switch completely your business area, but try to wrap it up, to try to look at the supply chain and kind of divert the streams a little bit. Financing, insurance maybe. And what else?
Stay on top of the needs of your customers. If you suddenly realize that your customers are needing totally different things than before, and your products and services are still the old ones, then that is like a big, again, 360 view, that you look at your suppliers, customers, competitors all around you, and see where you might have weaknesses and try to overcome those.
Right. A question from James from United Europe. Hi, Mika. Where AI is deployed with machine learning, it learns autonomously and quickly. It can continue to learn as long as data is fed to it. What can human operators do to ensure that they are aware and understand how the AI subsequently makes decisions in a real-life business process further down the line? To put it more shortly, how to make sure as far as possible that the AI is not biased too much in one direction. Biased, say, in favor of a certain type of customer who needs a supply of vaccine over another type of customer who also needs the same vaccine. Thanks, James.
Yeah, that was a long and complicated question. Well, this bias and this kind of machine learning type of technologies, there's this big risk of biases, and some of these most complicated algorithms are so complicated that even the person who developed them originally cannot really understand how they work. So it's more kind of, it's not magic really, but the problem is that if an algorithm is super complicated, you see what you feed the algorithm and you see what comes out, but you don't necessarily see what is happening in between. So what was the logic, how the algorithm made a decision? Nevertheless, then the guidance there is that you have to have diverse teams. Again, strong teams, men and women, young and old, different perspectives, different nationalities, and the stronger your team who is developing and the more perspectives you have, the more you are prepared to identify these biases. And obviously then the role of humans is to follow what comes out, evaluate the results of the algorithm, then make the needed adjustments. But as said, it's not always easy because many of these computer systems and algorithms are so complicated that if you have like thousands of rows of code, changing that might become, a challenge.
Right. But is it possible to have this machine learning completely unbiased version of it?
Always is. It's always, yes. These are always made by humans. I mean, we can influence. We are not kind of out of control or anything. They are always made by somebody. And obviously, if you have like talented people, always you can eliminate biases. And there probably is not like a perfect algorithm, but even moving from, let's say, 80% accurate to 95% accurate is a big change, and you always can influence and always strive towards 100%.
Right.
Like in everything in life.
Yeah, pretty much. We have answered so far all the questions we had from the audience. I would like to use this opportunity to invite everyone to get Mika's book from Amazon and to read it carefully. It has proven to be very beneficial to me. I am someone who thought AI, big data will never touch my field of work, my field of interest, which is environment and sustainability. And yet even I found it very interesting, very useful, very beneficial, not only for my general knowledge, but also I found insights for my professional interests. So anyone who is interested and who is here with us today and who will watch this in the recorded version, go to Amazon, type Growth Reinvented. I think that's enough. You will see Mika as the author of the book. Get the book, enjoy it, and start implementing AI, and at least like first collect your data, start collecting your data, and then try to see how AI can work for you and not you working for AI. That has been an amazing session. I enjoyed it truly. I don't see any more questions coming from the audience. If there are any, please shoot us the questions. If not, and if you have any questions later in a day or in a week or further down the line, connect with Mika on LinkedIn. You can find him easily. And Mika, over to you. Do you have any closing remarks? Would you like to share something else, something more?
Only one thing. I was waving my hand here to thank you for the kind words, and also say that I'm available. So if you feel that you need to speak with me, feel free to call me or send me a message. I'm happy to help. And as I said, I'm kind of United Europe alumni, so I'm kind of feeling obliged to help. So feel free to be in touch.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for being here with us, and until next time. Thank you, Mika, for sharing your wisdom and being here with us today to answer all these questions. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.